I tricked my wife into believing I was having an affair, but it was all a charade. I never cheated on her and I never would. It was just part of a bigger plan. Here's the full story, so subscribe to the channel. Click the bell to receive notifications and get ready, because it's a long journey that stretches from the end of 2019 to last week. My soon-to-be ex-wife was my first love. We started dating in 1992, at 17 years old, and now, at 45, we've spent almost our entire lives together. She is the only woman I've known intimately. We married 5 years after we started dating, young and fresh out of college. A year after the wedding, we welcomed our first child, and today we have 2 wonderful children, ages 22 and 17. For 23 years, I dedicated my life to her, built a home, and worked tirelessly to provide the life she desired. Of course, we faced challenges, like any couple, but we always found a way to overcome them and come out stronger on the other side. The discovery of her infidelity was a devastating blow. In March 2020, I began to suspect that something wasn't right. 2 months earlier, I was recovering from knee surgery after tearing my anterior cruciate ligament in the fall of 2019. My mobility was severely limited, with only 55% range of motion, which had a significant impact on our home. Many tasks piled up, and my children helped as much as they could. But some things only I could do, and they had to wait or be done by my wife, which she clearly did not enjoy. Intimacy between us was also affected. It had been waning before my injury, but during my recovery, it stopped completely. During this period, Sue began spending more time away from home, claiming to be going out with co-workers after hours. Between November 2019 and March 2020, this became a regular occurrence. I never had reason to suspect her in our 23 years together, so I didn't think much of it. She had her friends, I had mine, and we had mutual friends. I frequently went out with my friends, and there were never any issues. But in January of this year, I noticed a change. Sue became visibly distant. We were in the midst of a pandemic, but she had never denied me affection before. The hugs and kisses that were common stopped. Her phone, which was previously openly shared between us, was now always within her reach, and she became cautious with it. Her interactions with me became cold, as if my presence bothered her. Then came March, and with it, the lockdown in New York. Our professions are considered essential, so neither of us had to work from home. I had been cleared to return to work after 5 months of recovery and was eager to resume my routine. After so much time rehabilitating my knee and unable to perform physical activities, the situation left me perplexed. I have a passion for physical exercise, practice martial arts with dedication, and usually go to the gym 4 times a week. Additionally, I engage in various home projects. During a period of restriction, my then-wife informed me that she needed to work overtime. Initially, I didn't pay much attention, as her profession demands it. I assumed it would be on alternate days, but she started working extra every day, coming home several hours later, heading straight for the shower, and spending brief moments with me and our 17-year-old son. Our older son, 22, lives with his girlfriend in another part of the city. When my knee got better, we tried to resume intimacy, but I noticed she was distant, both mentally and emotionally. As days passed, I began to suspect a possible affair. Determined to find answers, I researched online for signs of infidelity. The evidence suggested that she was meeting all the criteria for such behavior. My investigation deepened until I reached social media, where I analyzed her previous Facebook posts. The photos showed our family, friends, and some of her night outs with work colleagues. In several of these photos, I noticed a man who was always very close to her, which deeply bothered me. The worst came to light when I discovered that this man was her friend on Facebook and followed her on Instagram. When I tried to access his profile, I realized I was blocked. This led me to question why I, her husband, was prevented from viewing the profile of a man who was her friend on social networks. At that moment, I took on the role of a detective, determined to discover the truth. There were no more doubts. She was having an affair with him. In the following months, I dedicated myself to compiling information, surprised by the amount of data that can be obtained from text messages and email records. I found out that, besides my mother, the most frequent number in the call history of my soon-to-be ex-wife was from an unknown man. A quick search confirmed it was the same man from the photos who had blocked me on Facebook. From there, everything became clearer, although many messages were incoherent, indicating that she deleted most of them. I had suspicions that she was cheating on me, and although the signs were strong, there was a lack of concrete evidence. I shared my findings with my friend Oz, who questioned whether I had confronted her. I confessed that I hadn't, as the evidence seemed insufficient. It was then that Oz told me about a monitoring app, the name of which I will omit as I am unaware of the norms of this space. After installing the app and waiting a few days, I came across messages exchanged between them, detailing the fun of the previous night and planning to repeat the encounter. It was a devastating blow, and in the following days, I felt completely shattered. I distanced myself from her, which disturbed her. She tried to comfort me, but I ignored her, unable to even look at her, the woman with whom I had shared 23 years of my life. On the third day, sadness gave way to anger. I informed us that my suspicions were confirmed, but instead of confronting her, I wanted revenge. I didn't just want a divorce, I wanted to completely ruin her. Inspired by a quote about unpredictability being the enemy of infidelity, I decided to make her life hell while secretly planning my exit. Now, in early June, I continued to collect data with the app, accumulating evidence of a complete relationship between them. Meanwhile, I began to act unusually, going out more and coming home late, always on the phone in front of her, vaguely answering her questions, and changing all my passwords. A drastic change after years of mutual transparency in marriage. She, in turn, had changed her passwords on Facebook and her phone, claiming security concerns, but I knew it was just an excuse to hide her affair. I shared my plan with Oz and also confided in my only older sister and two of my closest friends about the situation. They are the few souls in whom I place all my trust and whom I made swear to secrecy. Oz and I have a friendship that dates back to childhood, while Joey and Nina came into our lives during high school. Nina, in particular, came into our path unexpectedly. When July arrived, I noticed that my soon-to-be ex-wife was acting paranoid. She began sending me messages and calling with alarming frequency, always questioning whether I would be home to receive her or inquiring about my whereabouts when I wasn't around. It was evident that the doubts I had planted in her mind the previous month were beginning to bloom. In her conversations with POS, she expressed her confusion and mistrust, commenting that I seemed distant and cold. At the height of these interactions, she even suggested that perhaps they should stop meeting at our house, fearing that I might discover them. This confirmed my suspicions that she had indeed brought her lover into our home. In one of those conversations, POS questioned whether she feared that I might be unfaithful, which made her furious. I cannot express the sadistic pleasure I felt reading that exchange of messages, seeing my treacherous wife argue with her accomplice about the possibility of me cheating on her. Oh, the sweet irony. Meanwhile, my life continued its normal course. I was not involved with anyone. My leisure time was spent with Oz or Joey, drinking beer and watching fights, or in the company of my older sister and my brother-in-law, who was like a brother to me. My sister, at 52, and her husband, at 58, were aware of my future ex-wife's infidelity, but unaware of my plan. I preferred to keep it a secret, as my brother-in-law has a reputation for being somewhat of a gossip. We moved forward to October when things began to intensify. It had been 3 months since I started my fake plan, and Sue was becoming increasingly aware that I was distancing myself. From the day I put my plan into action until the confrontation on October 20th, 2020, there were no more touches, hugs, kisses, or any form of intimacy between us. Not that she needed it, since she continued to meet with POS, whether at his house or in motels. That afternoon, she called me at work, something that was not uncommon before but had become rare, and asked me to come straight home after work, claiming she had something important to tell me. I confessed that for a moment I believed she was going to confess her infidelity, but instead, I was greeted with a question about my happiness. She mentioned the time I spent away from home, the lack of affection, and the end of our intimate life. Concerned, she questioned whether my withdrawal was the result of resentment for the way she treated me during my knee recovery. And then, the final irony. She asked me if I was having an affair. I fell to the ground, overtaken by uncontrollable laughter. When I say uncontrollable, It was as if I were the Joker under the effect of his own laughing gas. At first glance, she must have thought I was laughing at the idea of betrayal, but in truth, it was the irony of the situation that had me in stitches. Tears streamed down as I pounded the floor, overcome with hysteria for a good 2 minutes, until I managed to calm down enough to speak. I looked into her eyes for the first time in months, shaking my head without giving a verbal response. I got up, kissed the top of her head, and withdrew to prepare for bed. Later that night in my office, I decided to investigate her conversation with him. I opened the app and there they were, exchanging messages in real time. She told the guy she was sure I was cheating on her. She recounted how she confronted me and how I had laughed in her face, fallen to the floor, and laughed for 5 minutes. She interpreted this as a sign that I no longer cared about her feelings. She didn't know why, but she felt she had lost me and that it was karma. The smile on my face as I read those words must have resembled that of the Cheshire Cat. The guy tried to console her, saying that if I really cared, she wouldn't have sought comfort in his arms. The tone of her response, however, indicated that she was beginning to doubt her decision to leave our marriage, especially since I wasn't fulfilling my role as a husband due to a legitimate injury. She had maintained the affair for almost a year, but the idea of losing me to another woman was enough to make her reconsider. Meanwhile, I was already executing the second phase of my revenge plan, organizing my finances. In September, I met with a family lawyer to initiate the divorce process, armed with a mountain of evidence of infidelity. New York is a state that considers fault in divorce, and with the evidence I had, I could leave her in an unfavorable position. My lawyer advised me to organize my finances, anticipating any division of assets. I did more than that. I secretly withdrew all my money from the joint accounts and transferred it to personal accounts. I also began looking for an apartment, part of phase 2 of my plan. Now it's November, and I've not only maintained my behavior, but I've improved it. This is where my friend Nina comes into the story. To give some context, Nina and Sue were never close. I met Nina in my freshman year of high school, 2 years before I met Sue. Since then, Sue has always seen Nina as a threat. My closest friend. There was always an insinuation that Sue didn't trust her. On the other hand, Nina was never a fan of Sue. At the beginning of my relationship with Sue, Nina warned me about how Sue was imposing herself on our circle of friends, something I never did with Sue. A group of friends left Nina frustrated because she understood the intentions behind Sue's actions. Nina, the only woman in our group, was in Sue's inner circle, where there were no other men besides POS. After being stranded abroad due to the pandemic, Nina returned to New York on November 3rd. Me, Oz, Joey, and his wife, who was Nina's sister, decided to celebrate her return with a dinner at Joey's house. There were just 5 of us, following CDC guidelines and taking the Rona situation seriously. Nina, always cunning, suggested a prank to provoke Sue. She proposed that we take pictures similar to the ones I had found of Sue and POS and post them on my Facebook. And so we did. On the 5th, Sue found out and was disturbed because she realized how close Nina and I seemed. She suspected infidelity and almost accused Nina, but she knew Nina had been stuck in Europe. Still, she tried to confront me. When Sue mentioned the photos, I saw the chance to turn the tables. I confronted her about her own photos with POS from the previous year. She was speechless, and it was the first time I mentioned the man's name. Sue tried to justify herself, not knowing that I had already seen the photos. I explained that I rarely use Facebook, so when I post something, it's significant, which made the photos with Nina gain attention. Sue tried to apologize, saying she is friendly with everyone and that there was nothing between them. She offered to delete the photos, but I said it wasn't the photos that hurt me, but her lies about extra work and outings with friends. As Worf from Star Trek said, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." Sue became overly attached and attentive, trying to rekindle intimacy, but I rejected her while documenting everything for POS. I had already given up on the marriage when I started my plan. Sue confessed to POS that she felt worse, didn't know what to do, and thought I hated her. Then, she decided to end it with him, saying she couldn't risk losing me, that she loved POS, but was still in love with me and wanted to save our marriage. You arrived almost 8 months late to this mess. He lost his composure, saying things as sweet as "he doesn't love you like I do," and "You're making a mistake. You can't just discard me like that." That message exchange was the last interaction they had until about 3 weeks ago. From November to December, Sue was in a state of uncertainty, trying to understand what was going on in my head and not knowing if I was being unfaithful, while he flooded her phone with messages, but she didn't respond. I saw her checking her phone frequently and putting it away quickly. The second stage of my plan was complete. The divorce papers were ready, and I had found an apartment in Co-op City, a place known to New Yorkers. I signed a 2-year lease, and all my money was in my personal account. I was ready to deliver the final blow. Then came Thanksgiving Day. My eldest son and his girlfriend organized a small gathering with our closest relatives. My son's girlfriend, who was an only child, and her parents, Sue, and our youngest son. We had a wonderful evening. My future daughter-in-law, who is studying to be a chef, prepared the dinner by herself. She really knows how to cook. I had to maintain the appearance that everything was fine between Sue and me. I showed affection for her several times throughout the night, with kisses on the cheek and warm hugs. She seemed to appreciate these gestures, although it was the first time I had touched her since the argument in October. I won't lie, I felt repulsion, but it was necessary to avoid raising suspicions in front of my children and my future daughter-in-law's parents. My youngest son decided to spend the night with his brother, so Sue and I went home. On the way, she thanked me for being so considerate and said she wanted to help me, not knowing what I was going through. I just said I needed time. For the first time since spring, we became intimate that night. I won't go into details, but it was not a moment of love. Afterwards, without any affection, I took a shower and went to sleep in my office, leaving her confused. I used protection for the first time in 2 decades, which left her even more perplexed, but she didn't ask any questions. I couldn't be reckless, knowing what she had done. The next day, I checked my spy app and saw that she had responded to the man who was pursuing her. He had declared his love for her. She expressed that it was futile to try to revive feelings in me that had been extinguished, as we shared the prison of marital life for 23 years. She deserved to feel the love and care of someone who valued her. This man, at 27 years old, 5 more than our eldest son, awakened in her something I could no longer do. Married at 45, a mother of 2, she found in an unlikely admirer a quality she lacked. What unfolds next is a revenge of epic proportions, but that is a topic for the next video. If you're watching this, the video is probably already available and linked above. Be sure to check it out and subscribe, activating notifications so you don't miss the continuation. How can one betray the trust built over 23 years? She became so accustomed to his presence that she stopped seeing him as something extraordinary. If there was love at some point, why not end it before getting involved with another? The pain would be inevitable, but less than that caused by her betrayal. Hidden truths tend to emerge, no matter how cunning we try to be. The surprise is that he chose to make her believe she was being betrayed as well, a move to deepen the wound. But the controversy revolves around the use of a spy app. Was it a step beyond what is acceptable or justifiable given the circumstances? Don't forget, the story is not over yet. It continues in the next video. Subscribe and hit the bell to follow the entire series. And in your next live broadcast, be sure to use the high-quality music selection available on Spotify or your platform of choice, royalty-free. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time.